Welcome to episode 5 of Keep the Hotel Empty. I'm your host, Eric Paul. In studio today, we are grateful to welcome in music curator, hip-hop ambassador, and artist manager, DJ Cellus. In today's episode, Cellus discusses the early days of internet radio, what he feels it takes to be heard, and some of his duties managing 2 active hip-hop artists. Please enjoy. Welcome to Keep the Hotel Empty. Today we've kept the hotel empty to welcome in our friend Cellus. Cellus is a broadcast professional and artist representation for almost 2 decades. Welcome, Cellus.
Thank you, man. It's great to be here. And now when you put it in that context, yeah, I guess so now. Almost, 20 years since 2004. So it's great to be here and still be here.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit, of course, about high definition DJs and where you're at now.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of start at the start at always. And some things that I think a lot of people aren't familiar with. Take me back to your start when internet radio was just kind of becoming a rumbling and the scene where you started.
Yeah, it's a different animal because I've had experience within commercial, nonprofit, college radio, and then I started internet radio in 2010. And that was with, his name's John Miller. He used to run FCC Free Radio. And, it was just a different beast. It's when you're at local radio station, people you'll encounter and they'll hear your voice and, oh, I know your show. So you're like, awesome, someone's listening. But the power and the mysteries of the internet, when that, like, for example, when I first did the show there, I had social media following, whatever you have it, you post, you let whoever's in your network know you have a show. And I followed this sports show. So I did my first show, and the next week they go, hey, do you have like a following or do you have anything? And I said, no, I've done radio, I played it. And they say, yeah, because you went from, there's 50 shows, you went from dead last to number 2 overnight. And I said, really? He said, yeah, you did 5,000 downloads, almost literally like within the first week. And then the week after that, you did another like 5,000. So I was like, damn, I should probably be a little more conscious of what I say. Because then, it's just the mysteries of the internet. And then, whether it's the SEO or the directories on how they're able to channel that. And then when you see that where, how then it just opens up the mysteries of how people are finding and hearing it. So, that was kind of how I got my start. And I did that for, a couple of years. And then I actually ended up moving out here to Florida.
So you did terrestrial radio first?
Yeah.
And where were you doing that?
That was started in 2004 at UC Santa Cruz. So it was at their college radio station, KTHE. And I didn't take the class. I had no interest really. I just was basically a big nerd about hip-hop. And I had a sociology class, and I ended up sitting next to the director of the station. And he was like, man, you know a lot. Like, you should come on my radio show. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, I'm the director of hip-hop for the radio station. So we ended up doing a show. It was called Who Drops the Beat, and that was his show. His name was Leor Brown. And, started doing that, and that was just kind of how it led into it. And then, it's just kind of when you have the airwaves and the possibilities and you can produce your own show and get your content out there, it just kind of opens up a bunch of different things. And, just how you present, in my case, presenting music or, interviewing interesting guests, just kind of gives you the bug,
So you're still talking pretty much Wild West of internet radio at that point.
Yeah.
Transitioning from college radio into internet radio, and the internet radio started here in Florida?
No, internet radio started in San Francisco.
Okay.
And then I did that for a couple years. And man, if I knew then what I knew now, at that point. But then I moved out here to Sarasota and just got tired of San Francisco. It's expensive, and now there's more poop on the streets.
Yeah, right.
So I came out to WSLR, which is the community radio station here. I did a hip-hop show there for 7 years, and then did some time at the same time for 3 years of that as well at WSRQ here in Sarasota, and that was producing talk radio shows. So that was more on the production side. So when it comes to radio, I can, I've worked as a host, and then I can produce, record, edit, engineer, and kind of do the whole thing, from tip to stern with, distribution, all that stuff. So, as I've worked with other personalities in radio and podcasts, it's been like, I don't know many things. I know a little bit about many things, but radio, it's just to me, it's like there's a formula to it, you know, and there's a formula, but there's no structure. So it's very dependent on what you as the creator are doing. So, you know, what does that look like, whatever you want to do? So that's like the tough thing to explain to people, because they ask, well, how do you do it? Well, it just depends. You know, you have to start doing it, and then it turns into kind of a process and kind of evolves, and, you know, you find your groove, because, you know, I think to really want to do something, you kind of have to suck at it at first,
right.
You know, or you just have to have a starting point and just be willing to kind of like build and then, you know, do it consistently. And, you know, it's really kind of the love and passion and just enjoying music at that. And, you know, really looking back, it's what's really got me, you know, to where I am now, where I've met, you know, so many people, different artists, you know, from all the various mediums. I mean, it's, you know, how I met you as well.
Right.
So
yeah, and I definitely want to get into that, because I see how this tree has branched out so much, and I find that interesting with everybody. You know, you get one discipline and then it turns into multiple, and that was what made me curious. What did you find, if anything, transitioned well from your time in terrestrial radio into the beginnings of internet, and what surprised you that it was like, okay, this internet radio beast is actually different in this regard?
Well, good question. You know, it's kind of it's one in the same, in the sense of, you know, either you're playing music or you're interviewing people and you're talking on a mic, right? But how you get to that journey and how you do it and put your own flair and style is one thing. But, you know, I think it's the difference in terrestrial and internet radio is just the power of the internet and the power to have your own brand and the power to kind of like cross-pollinate with people. So in terrestrial radio, you can't be like, oh, I'm at this station, which is a major broadcast, whatever, and you're at a different station. It's like if you work at ABC or NBC, you can't go, hey, I'm on ABC, you can come on, you know, can I go on your NBC show and you come on mine?
Right.
And so that, having that power, it's really, I think, relational with artists and the people you work with on their formats. So, you know, again, all relationship based. But again, it's now you have social media, you know, which is huge, and then just kind of creating content. So it's really building your own independent machine, and then kind of what you feed it. And then, you know, again, then you get into your SEO, you get into directories, your distribution, and then how you're creating that content, because it can be a 15-second clip that people get interested in. It could be 30 seconds. It could be a minute.
Right.
Or it could be, you know, long form, or it leads them into that. So it's just kind of how you break it down and where people find their comfort thing. So it's really just being able to kind of be yourself and, you know, do what you do best, or, you know, what you're driven to do.
So taking off some of the guardrails of the traditional structures of corporate media has really allowed you to cross-pollinate, as you put it, more so than you would have been able to if you would have been graduated through the college radio into a larger radio market. Because
I've worked at, you know, community radio is great, but, you know, again, it's the bandwidth. But I think the other thing too is you can prove the numbers. So that's what can lead to your profitability. It can lead to, you know, a bigger audience. You can prove all those things. Whereas terrestrial radio, you have to be like, okay, our wattage area covers X amount, right? So within that X amount, you can efficiently say 5, maybe 10% of people at that given time you're on air are listening, but I can't really prove it to you. Whereas on the internet radio, you can see that by IP address, by what phone they're on, you know, all those things. So you're able to prove that. So then that's what makes you able, standing as your own on a brand, to then go, okay, I could either find sponsors or attract sponsors, because now you have the numbers to prove it, that breaks out into your demographics and all that thing too. So again, there's the mysteries of the internet, but then there's also those hard facts that it provides, you know, with that. So terrestrial radio is great. I mean, I've had that experience, but you just have more freedom when it's in a podcast form or internet radio, you know, and that's what's led me to work now with the high definition DJs, led by DJ Reality, DJ Dami Styles, and DJ T-Baby. They were just like, come here and do your thing. And I'm like, okay, do my thing. And they're like, yeah, whatever you do, just, you know, do it, and just do it consistently. And then, you know, just kind of, and so I've done about a show like the last month. So I do like a weekly show producing music and, you know, seeing how the numbers kind of go, and then kind of expanding out. But they offer a lot of different opportunities, and they're continuing to build. So it just made sense, like coming to be there at the right time to, just kind of explore and see what the possibilities are. But, long and short, I got the itch again too. So it was just kind of to be able to funnel what I do in helping artists and, kind of have it as a home base, and also just do it yourself, because again, helping artists on the other side where getting promotion or getting heard, whether that's, playlists or blogs and all that stuff, just having at least your own platform that you can promote and put your own things on and have that space is important.
Because when you say show at this point, you're talking about a show in context where you're doing a showcase of music. You're not doing like DJ bits in between too much where you're talking to guests or doing current events or anything like that. You're curating music now when you say show. That's what you mean, right? Yeah, curating,
and then I plan to add some artists and, have some interviews on that. The show is called The Process, and that's what it is to me. Is just everything is a process, but it's just really how you react to it. You're always going through something or dealing with something, whether good or bad, and you just hope that there's a light at the tunnel and it ends the way you want it to, or you're trying to work towards that. So,
and a good soundtrack.
Yeah, and a good soundtrack. So it's just kind of, and again, working with those DJs, I didn't place much value on it at the time, because sometimes like, I'm just playing music and putting it together. But then they're like, no, it's an actual experience, because now you don't really have that. You've got algorithms, you got Spotify and all over the place, but there's still a lot of people that want to find good music and, or at least something that they want to hear. And so, again, I think that's the space I serve, is just taking people on that journey, and mixing things up. So it's kind of open format. So, for me, sometimes it's, whether it's a feeling or it's a melody that gets stuck in my head, or, relevant to current events, or, something like that. So I'm the common thread through the music I play. And then, to be able to kind of produce it in a way, then taking them on that ride. So there's an introduction, you have your music, and then I'm telling you why, and then, kind of going through that. So, it's just kind of the course of the process of, I guess, life in a lot of ways.
So is the idea of the High Definition DJs platform sort of like a curation of the curation, like a playlist that's more tangible, because like you said, you're woven into this a bit more than just, I know a guy on playlist or Spotify, I follow his playlists. Is this kind of like an evolution of that? Is that what the...
Yeah, I think it gives a little more space and personality to it, but I also have the playlists on Apple Music and on Spotify for people to listen. But there's, I'm more of a radio personality DJ, whereas, there's plenty of DJs within the network that are part of the High Definition DJs that, that they do live DJ sets and spin there. So what they're creating is essentially a space for DJs to be who they are, with the vision of where they want to be and who they want to be. So, they're looking at, for someone like me, there's possibilities of syndication and other stations and picking up the show. And then, there's other DJs where, people hear it and they want to book them, for whatever. So there's, it just offers the space, but, it feels like through the content I create and curate, and then, eventually artists and things I interview, just to kind of master those possibilities and, just kind of see where it goes from there.
So the way it kind of works as it relates to the terrestrial thing, if you had a show like this and you were, say, on an NBC station back in the day, the best you could do is be syndicated to all the other NBC affiliates, yeah?
Sure.
But now in this case, and correct me if I'm wrong here, in this case, if you get something going, theoretically, you can syndicate to whoever you want to. This is the idea?
Yeah, opens up that possibility, because then some of the other DJs within the network also work at radio stations on the terrestrial side too. So, again, it felt before it was like it was just me doing it. But now when you have this whole network of DJs, then now there's reach, because you can go, now I can go directly to this coalition of DJs and say, hey, I have this artist, or I got this project. And, if they like it, because even then it's just the opportunity to get the access to that. And, with hip-hop culture turning 50, this past week, that, it was a culture started by DJs, so essentially curators and tastemakers through that. So, again, to kind of magnify the power and then what I bring in what I've been doing, then, I think it just opens up more possibilities, and it benefits, the other artists and, musicians I work with.
I think that brings up something very interesting.
Sure.
You're exactly right. When hip hop starts, this is a DJ culture. This is underground. This is someone who can curate the sounds and proliferate what's cool.
Yeah.
You know, and somewhere along the line we lost that quite a bit when we went rogue on the internet. And somewhere now we have, and I think you used the perfect word for it. We've got the reemergence of what is tastemakers.
Yeah.
But there's kind of scrambling for the high ground on that because everybody has an opinion.
Right.
How do you think this looks going forward? How do we get back to the point where there is somebody? What do you see, and how do you see yourself being the somebody that people can look to and say, you know what, I know I can listen to Cellus's show and get a hot track just like I knew whatever Def Jam was going to put out next was going to be a record I liked 30 years ago. You know what I mean? How do we, what do you see the road is between where we are kind of now, where everybody has an opinion, and where we get back to the point where there is some like...
Yeah. I think everybody is entitled to their opinion.
Yeah.
With that. And so it's kind of like, I care about what I do, but I don't expect everybody else to. And so, again, you're fighting for everybody's attention, whether it's on their phone or a different internet radio station. There's so many possibilities. So it's just focused on what I'm doing. And if it catches on and people listen, it's great. But yeah, I think building towards that is just giving the space to have the opportunity, and then you got the things behind it, the social media aspect, and what people find and all that stuff. But essentially it's kind of like finding your tribe, but I don't try and hinder anybody. I just kind of continue doing what I do, and if people catch on to it, great. If they don't, that's great too, because I think as long as you have people that don't like you, then you're doing something right.
This is true.
In some respect. And consistency over time is what is greatness, I think. It's just being able to consistently do it and still be here, not when it's popular, but when it's not popular and you face some losses or, life happens, things like that, then, it ends up being kind of an anchor point, where you can always kind of like go back to that and just know, like, at least this is your space you can give air to. And, you just kind of see and just kind of build off those possibilities. So, like you said, where does you see it going? It reminds me of like Mos Def, where they said, they're worrying about hip hop. Well, when you ask about where's hip hop going, ask yourself, where am I going? So, I can only take my journey and what I'm doing and the artists that I work with and, just kind of master those possibilities at the end of the day. So, again, it's just being able to have the space to create and, you just kind of see where it goes. And, I think especially when it comes to music business and the industry, a lot of it is, heavily relationship based. I mean, we all well know you've been in music yourself for a long time, and we've come across people that we work well with. And then there's ones that, to put it simply, that you don't.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's heading in the direction. I mean, there's just so many possibilities, and I think it's just really cutting across the noise of things. And that is, what the show or the podcast offers. But I think everybody's content has value, and in a free market society, then you can always find a niche. You can always find, and sometimes you don't even know what that is. You just kind of have to put it out there. Like my stuff can be, that's why I explained to the DJ when they asked, like, well, how do you characterize your show? I said, sometimes if I just want to do a whole show about Andre 3000 from Outkast, like I want the space to do that. Or if I want to play funk, soul, hip hop, rock, things, again, it's just explaining and taking them on a journey as to the logic of why you're doing what you're doing.
Right.
And, making it interesting. So, again, you can, as an audio engineer, you can get to the nitty gritty and the nerdiness of it. Was the levels right? Was it clear? What mics did they record on? Was it a sound? You can, because after a while, your ear just gets developed to that. So you just know that. So it's just trying to find the right methods and things like that. So, again, everything is a process, and putting that together in a way that is enjoyable to the listeners ultimately. But you kind of have to end up doing it for yourself and at the same time, so that you can keep doing it and you enjoy doing it, but at the end of like keeping it through. So it's a balance thing, so you have to take it seriously to the point that you don't take it too seriously also.
So with such an open ground and the free-for-all things that is kind of the state of play right now, what do you think gives you the biggest advantage to get some attention? Do you think it's your experience? Do you think it's I know you've got a huge swath of background information about hip hop.
Yeah.
What do you think sets you apart?
I guess setting me apart, that's another good question, man. I guess it's just, again, just having, at the end of the day, I think what you can't take away from people, especially people that have been doing it consistently, is just the time that they've put in. Right. And just the execution of it, So for me, like with a curated show, and right now I've done 2-hour shows, and this one I'm doing currently is about an hour. So it's very tight,
Right.
I like to very cohesive. So, and I like to be efficient, and I don't like to waste people's time. So when I present something, it's because I've listened to it 2, 3, 4, 5 times at least to make sure it's tight. I was up till like 3 a.m. last night just combing through music, and just kind of where it just goes on this journey where you just take, like, it starts with one thing, it may make it on the list or it may not, and you just kind of go on this journey, and it's just being creative.
And I'm guessing you've been digging through sounds like that since before it was as easy as Spotify. This is something you do.
Yeah.
Where do you think that passion to find the next music that's going to move you comes from?
That, it's just, I guess it's like when music was, there was a lot more gatekeepers in music, I think. So, I grew up in the era, and I guess this is dating myself, of, taking the blank tape and recording off the radio station, and trying to get the whole song, but then trying to cut it off right before the DJ starts talking.
You gotta be quick on that pause button.
Yeah, hit the pause, and, maybe give it some space, and just, that real kind of primitive mixing.
Yes, sir.
So, it's just, it just kind of ends up, I would still do it anyway, making playlists or just things, because, again, especially now, is you can, it's like the artists I work with where, it's not, all it takes is one song, something for them to hear it. And I always want it to be where, where they hear your story, no matter where they jump in, where, so they hear it at whatever particular moment, right? Mm-hmm. And then, is it that interesting where they go, damn, I want to know and hear more moving forward? But are they also curious to go, damn, I wonder what else that they've done, and you do that with artists. You find one, and then you check out their other catalog and find all that stuff. So like on my show, I'll play something that's brand new, came out this week, but then I'll mix in something from like 96, or 2004, because it's just where my mind or something just leads me to that. And just as long, so that it's cohesive, and again, it's just, I think what sets me apart is just kind of the time and the nerdiness of what, I've been doing.
So do you think that's the cohesion amongst your show, the nerdiness, for lack of a better term? You're passionate about more than one flavor, and you want to share that?
Yeah, I think so. because that's just what I was raised on too. My dad listened to like everything from contemporary jazz, from, Kenny G to Sade to Earth, Wind and Fire, Santana, things like that, and then Motown. So just being versed around that stuff, and then and then part of it is just kind of like putting order to chaos. I kind of have probably some borderline, OCD. And some ADD at that too. So it's like putting all that stuff together and, putting order to chaos essentially, and just, trying to find a common thread. And that's what's cool about radio too, is just meeting different personalities where they have, the show and the content may be different, but they all kind of function in the same way. They're just, I think, expressing themselves differently, from the experiences we all come from. They're all, it's kind of the same thing. You all have an experience and, where you're going currently, but that process, that experience, and specifically how you got there is all different. So it's just, and then people being interested in the story, whether that's the person as the DJ or the music that they enjoy hearing. You just nowadays, you don't know what is going to draw people in. You see artists where they make a song and they were like, this is terrible, I didn't even like it, and all of a sudden it just blows up. Like,
right, yeah, that
you see that all the time with artists where they're like, they have to perform that one song, and it's their bread and butter, and that's the hit that they know, and you just never know. So yeah, I think it's just continuing to build and just do what is there. And
your show isn't, and your view of music isn't necessarily about avoiding those tracks that they have to play and the track everybody knows. It's about the combination of the deep cuts and
deep cuts. There's always a method to the madness, but sometimes it feels right to play that hit. or just find that. And again, it's kind of how it relates to the rest of the show, and go through those things. So I'll play something that's like completely rock, and then by the end of it, it's DJ Premier. So there's songs in between that just it just makes sense to me, and then just kind of see. And it's just I think my friend DJ Reality told it to me. I said, because sometimes now is everybody has an ear, and she says the good ones have a good ear. The great ones trust it.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so it's just trusting your ear and doing that. And, when I've worked with artists and, worked with artists that have toured on stages with Andrea Bocelli, and, they gave us 2 different mixes of a song, and they said, which one? And when I heard that, and I was like, it's that one, and they were like, exactly, then I'm like, okay. Then from that point on, I trusted my ear. And
it's a hard thing for some people to do.
Yeah, and that was like in 2020. So, 15, 16 years in, and so, a lot of it is just trusting yourself too, at the end of the day. And then, you build up a thick skin on things too, because there's always critics, there's always, all those things. But, you just keep doing what you're doing, because then that's what fuels that too, is at the end of the day, you can only stop yourself. They can't really stop you. They can try, but they really can't.
So that's a good segue into the other hat you wear, is to artist management, where you have to embody that ethos, where no one's going to be stopped. So tell us a little bit about the artists you manage and where you're at, and how that kind of works with the promotion and your experience in radio.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I met most of the artists I've worked with, and it went from working in radio, interviewing artists, to doing local events, and combining art and live music and vendors and food trucks, and creating like a whole curated experience for people to show up to. But that just ended up being a lot of work. So I used to work with a lot of artists, and then now I predominantly work with 2. I'm happy to always kind of volunteer information, because I always want to see, when you meet people, it's always like, for me, it's always like, let's do one thing right. Like, I can always see a vision of, man, the possibilities, but I don't know who I'm dealing with at that particular moment, if they have that capacity to go as far as I can see. So that's why I only work with 2 artists now, because they have that capacity and they have that visions for themselves.
And both of them have relatively longer careers as well. They're not just guys that just started doing this.
And I've now been working with them 8, 9, 10 years.
And who's the 2 that you're working with now?
The 2 I work with Ryan Ito, who's originally from Baltimore, based here in Sarasota. And then I work with Montezi, who lives in St. Pete, originally from New York. And they just have different styles. And I think at the end of the day, with hip-hop now, it's weird, because it started as an original thing. You had to be original, you had to have different rhymes, a different style. And then, sometime in the early 2000s, it kind of ends up being kind of homogenous.
Right.
Everyone's trying to be like, that's why you have YouTube producers making
the type beats.
Yeah, type like beats.
Yes.
And so, so working with artists that have their own vision of what they want to accomplish, and their very long game, that's what interests me, because it's just like, well, then what can we create? What can we do that's never been done? And that's what's led us, on that journey now, and what we continue to do, that we've been at it for a while. So, and it's blood, sweat, tears, time, money, all those things. But it's just to create, because you have those moments, but you work so hard to create those moments. But sometimes those moments can last a lifetime. And if not, at least it was enjoyable creating those things. So, I'm excited. I'm more excited now than I've been, in the last few years, because of all those possibilities.
Right.
So it's like big projects, and now they've gotten to a point where they can kind of scale, and you can sit on content, and it's just really just being different and counter to everything else, because you see it where on the internet, like, everybody wants this instantaneous thing. So it's like, we all come from a generation that didn't have that.
Right.
You had to wait. When you called somebody at their house phone, they weren't home. So you just had to wait for them to get home.
Right.
So now it's like those things, to be patient enough and not seek attention. So it's really kind of being counter to those things is what we try to do. And And then just kind of navigating and being there with the artist. But, with the artist, I'm fortunate that they're very talented in what they do. So I think they would succeed with or without me.
Right.
But I've had people say that, they wouldn't do anything without you. And I'm like, no, you can't really say that, because my job is to, find opportunities, and they're doing it on, they have to work harder for themselves first. I can't do, and, I'm not the talent. But my job is to sell, and sometimes sell to a point where they look at me and go, this guy must be full of shit. And then I have to go, okay, then I got you. So then now you present it to the artist and let them do what they do best. Because if they didn't and it failed and you hear the music, then you'll know either way. Your people's ears, they're going to trust them either way on what they like or don't like. And that's still kind of arbitrary at the same time.
Yeah, right.
But, just kind of hedging your bets. And if anything, too, is just kind of creating for the sake to create and just be like, all right, we can pull this off. And I'm fortunate with each of the two artists in Montesi and Rhinito that I've worked with, that we've done creative things that I think stand up, where we've flown to Europe and we worked with, two artists. They're a guitar duo, and they were the opening act for Andrea Bocelli for like 10 years. And so we did a classical hip-hop and electronic fusion album, and, did something like that. The upcoming project we have with Rhinito that we will release September 21st is an all-orchestrated hip-hop album of original music from the first album we did. And we're going to release it 5 years to the day that we did the orchestra show in 2018.
Cool.
And then, Montesi does wrestling theme song music. So when I first met him, I met him through radio at a radio station. And because I was teaching Rhinito radio at the time, he had just started doing radio. And, he's like, he brought Montesi in. He's like, well, tell him what you do. And he goes, I do wrestling theme song music. And so in my head, I got it really quick. I'm like, oh, he's bringing the industry of professional wrestling and sports entertainment and hip hop and making music like that. But I looked him dead in the eye once I got it, and I was like, that's great, but that's going to take a while. Mm-hmm. And here we are 8 years later. I mean, we were at Booker T in Houston a couple weeks ago. The tag team champions, Culture Inc. He's doing the theme song, so he does the performance for that. And then, the week after that, we're in Miami. I met Ice Cube, as guest of Michael Cooper for Big 3 basketball, because, he did a theme song for that team.
So how much of this, when you're going from curating a show for internet radio to being in these types of scenes, and you're in a totally different capacity?
Sure.
What's the main thing that crosses over that makes it so you get to be the same Cellus, you just get to succeed in two different pots? Is this just like the growth of just being passionate about music, the kid that just loved music, and you can just extrapolate that from curating a show to representing an artist? Or are you fully switching hats?
No, I don't think you're, fully switching. I mean, there is like a business sense, and I think it's just kind of having like a sense and read on people, to a certain extent. And then just, but I think it stems from that passion and just being that awareness. But yeah, it's just as you meet people and they do that. But again, it's the artist, pushing for what they want to do and get into. And I think just being willing to explore those possibilities, because sometimes it feels like when you have those experiences, I'm like, why am I in this room and next to these people? Like, I shouldn't be, but I am. So you just kind of have to trust it.
Right.
And, just sometimes fake it till you make it, or just go in there. But I think it's just at the end of the day, like being able to deal with people and then, provide a high level experience or something of value to them too. Because it's still, I think it's still a service based thing. You still got to be good to people, and, how you conduct yourself and, deal in business, and then deliver and execute. I think, and be accountable to that too. I've run across so many things where people just aren't accountable anymore. And that's like the most annoying thing, because talent almost comes a dime a dozen. I would almost venture to say that in some music, there's people that succeed that don't have any talent, because that's either they have a good budget or they got great marketing. Like everybody knows an artist, and that's not to say the artist is talented or not, but in their own opinion,
right,
in listening, that they think that music is not what they would prefer to listen to.
They don't find anything of value.
Right. But that because most of the time they had good budget or promotion or all those things. So there's always kind of like, there's a recipe to it, but how the sauce comes out at the end of the day, because I'm heavily rooted too within a hospitality. I've worked in kitchens and restaurants and things like that. So, it's consistency. As a chef, you're only as good as the last meal you cooked. So you could sit there and say, "Oh, this guy's great." But they hear it or they eat the food that you made, and if it's terrible, then at that particular moment, you're terrible.
Right.
It's just what it is. So just trying to build consistency and, from there, but at least you're fortunate with music, you make a classic, then it stays classic, all the way through.
And that's sort of what you got going on with this song that you're doing 5 years on the anniversary, right? Tell me a little bit about that song.
Yeah. What particular? It's an album, is what it's going to be. It's called the Cosmic Guide,
okay.
And so we're making it the Cosmic Guide Experience. So we originally in 2018, it started as an idea from Rhinito. We were in the studio probably like 2016, 2017, and we're making this song. We're here in Sarasota, and he's like, and we just started working together probably about 2 years in management. And he goes, "I'm going to have this song played by an orchestra one day." And I was like, shit, that's, pretty innovative. But now, I have to help, figure that out.
That's what I'm curious about.
And
where do you come in?
And so, from that time, I started working at the local radio station here. And the guy I was producing for had a show that was based around the arts. Mm-hmm. And so, it's always been an idea. The album's been out since 2016, and it's kind of like a living document. It feels like to us. So, and so one day, the conductor of the Pops Orchestra walks right in. So I'm like, there's the opportunity. And so it was from that point I met them and tried to push and get that. It took us 2 years to plan a 2-hour show. At the end of the day. And we did everything from the promotion to booking the venue to, just a lot of steps, and just in that process and allowing time. It took that long because we didn't know. We were just we're going to do this, but I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it. So it was meeting the conductor, having a meeting with them, and then, if we're going to do it, it's going to be this, it's going to take that. And then, well, what about the music? Oh, then you have to get somebody to, do the sheet music and orchestra arrangement and all that stuff. So then it just takes time.
So when you're in this role of artist management, and Rhinito or Montesi mm-hmm. or whomever gives you one of these ideas, do you ever have the thought where you're thinking to yourself, man, maybe we don't want to do this? Or are you always living in the gear where it's okay, whatever we got to take to do this, I guess I got to get on my horse right now?
Yeah, now, it's kind of I always believe in my artist, and I think that they've consistently proven that. So, by this juncture, we just kind of trust it and just be willing to try it, because there's some, it's just kind of being just willing to do it, and then just seeing there. Because sometimes, again, you can plan and execute, and even when we've made things to fruition, there's still things where I'm critical of damn, the sound should have been better, or
right.
You could have made, all those things. But, again, I think it's just being willing to try and then trusting in those abilities and, nurturing that, whether it's connections I have or platforms that we can get to, or just, just being willing to try that, that this idea is crazy, but it can't be any worse or any better that if you don't try it. I know that we won't succeed if we don't try it.
Yeah, that's a real
so
thing.
At least just kind of taking the shot and just seeing who responds, because sometimes, you could send it out and sometimes they don't respond for a certain amount of time, and then people do, and then it's just trying to build and do one thing right. Because especially in music, you have talent, but then there's the business of it. There's, the distribution, the marketing, the registering of the songs, and all that stuff. So,
So you got to know that the idea is one you're willing to put all that work in for.
Yeah. And then again, when you've done it for a long time, it's just trying to have a process. Again, it's with a radio show. I have a structure, but within that structure, how are we going to create within it? The creativity is unlimited, but we know in order to get it from here as an idea to it's out for people to consume and possibly listen to see if they we have to do those steps. Those are set in stone. They got to record, they got to mix, they got to master, it's got to be up to snuff. That takes an investment of time, money, emotion, and living life. And then, it has to get to that process. So we always just make sure that it's building a solid foundation, and just continuing to build. But I guess I think the other project you were thinking about was the one we did recently with the USL soccer team here in Sarasota.
Yeah.
That's the one. So yeah, getting ahead of myself. But that project is called the Paradise Project. And that started with a brand new soccer team here in Sarasota. I met the team owner, and he's just in his world of soccer, he's accomplished. He's coached teams at a very high level. He has coaching licenses, and I've always loved the game of soccer, and I understand of like what's the possibility. And again, he had to listen to the music and the catalog of music. He has to like it first before he decides to work with us. But it was great because he understood that we're free to create. So he didn't hinder us. He was just like, I like the music. And then we just kind of figured out, it has to kind of represent the city. It has to represent the team. So for us, we knew we didn't have the audacity to say this one song represents everybody.
You're right.
But we had the audacity to say that myself and our artists have the range to do something that would be for the team that reaches a lot of different people on different things. So what that project ended up looking like is we did an English version, we did a Spanish version because the game of soccer and the most widely spoken language, and then
certainly our local community.
Yes, in the local community, and then we did orchestra versions of both of those, and then we did a house music version. And then to kind of bring the community in further, it reached out to the legendary Riverview High School KTHE Marching Band.
Nice.
And asked them to be a part of it. And they said yes. So I was like, oh, okay. And then, so we were able to create that experience and bring in the community and have a cool version of a marching band, because who does that? But it was just that possibility and take the shot. I had to reach out to a couple of high schools, and some of them didn't want to do it. Okay, fine. And when I'm told no, it just means, okay, then we're not going to do it with you, but I'm still going to get it done.
Right.
And we were just fortunate enough that, Riverview High School wanted to do the project, and, that was a really cool thing because after doing that experience, we didn't really know the effect, but it kind of like restored our faith too in like the younger generations coming up, because I think if they're given the right opportunities and a trust for them to create and be a part of something, then they're going to want to be invested in it too.
And there's plenty to be excited about.
Yeah, and again, it restored our kind of faith, and it was like really cool. But then I didn't even really see what the effect it would have after. But the students had never been part of a video shoot, and they didn't know what that takes. And then they were active, and and they just brought their own part. And that's the way it was just like, we want to create this experience, but what can be brought to it? I can't play the music. And that's the thing, I don't play an instrument. I just have an ear because I've been, a music listener for a long ass time, and I've listened to a lot of music, and there's just certain tones and beats and music that move me a certain way.
And this is really your underlying skill set.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess you could say that, yeah. It's just being a long-time listener and, first-time caller.
Yeah.
And just kind of working through all that.
So when you're serving the capacity that you do for Ryan Ito and something like this soccer thing comes up, do you actively cold call and say, hey, I got a guy that could be the greatest theme song on tap, we need a crack at this, or does it kind of come to you, or how does something like that work from your job part of it?
Yeah, it's just, I think, always just kind of being aware and looking for opportunities and trying to explore that. So with the soccer team, it was announced in October of last year. So what was remarkable about this soccer team is the owner created it in 6 months.
Damn.
Ryan Ito and I worked with him for 7 months. So I saw that it was announced in there, and I was like, oh, okay, there's a team here. Like, this is cool, and it's a USL team, and it's just under the Major League Soccer,
right? And
just I know what the possibilities are, because here in Sarasota the community's growing. You got a bigger city, so we're down to build something foundational. So I just reached out, literally hit them on Instagram, and just proposed the idea. And they, I went to their development meetings and met everybody, and said this is what we want to do. And again, they had to listen to the music. I could sit here and talk all day, but if it's not up to snuff. And then it just kind of built from there. We just kind of kept going along and just said, this is what we're going to do. And, make the first song, found the beat, and then, just kind of built from there. But it was just willing to take that initial reach out. And that just came from reading the paper, seeing a post on Facebook from a local newspaper and just being like, and reaching out. And then I sat with the owner. We watched a World Cup game downtown. And then the rest is kind of history. And then we just kind of built out and worked with them as the team, got there. And, 7 months later, they're playing their game. They got their first win at home. And,
nice.
After they win, the song as everyone's walking out the stadium is our song.
So it's the sheer willingness to be proactive.
Yeah, that's the big part. Nothing happens by itself and nothing comes easy. So you have to just kind of work the process of it. And see, and sometimes, it falls short or, people don't want to work or, again, as you go up and you work with different artists too, everybody's working at their different pace. They're working on those things. So, it's trying to like create those moments and those conditions for it to be created and for it to succeed. And, that's kind of the fun part is I like seeing things built. Right. Because it's easy for people to destroy things and tear it down, but to build and foundational, because we know that, the team, I'm willing to bet on that team, that this is, people may not get it now, but that's something that's going to carry for years, when what their goals are and what they're trying to do and build a successful team. So, if in meeting the owner and he wanted to be successful, then, I want to see him be successful as well, because he's also a good person. Right. So, working with good people, doing good things, then, leads to success. So, again, and the way I work with artists too is, we always say that there's 3 things that shouldn't hinder us from working: ego, women, and money. Because those are the things that traditionally like break people up. Yeah. And every move we make, it takes a team to do it. And so, just going through that process and being willing to do it and working with those people, again, you're always going to encounter issues when you're creating something or trying to accomplish something, but I shouldn't have issues with the people that say they want to accomplish those things with us. So like when I work with artists, I have 3 things I say. I said, we should speak to each other one way, honestly. And we should have a different conversation every day, because we shouldn't be stagnated. We should be trying to build and solve these issues. And then thirdly, if we set up and have an opportunity, we don't set them up to screw them up. Simple as that. That's the rules.
Shirt that says that.
I might have to, man. But that's where those things, you keep it simple, right? And then just build, and then then those possibilities. But those are the things that I've been able to work with these 2 artists, for almost 10 years, and what we've accomplished, and we're still going through those things, and it just everything happens in time, but you just kind of have to give yourself that opportunity to do this if you want it. But again, it's not. It's not for the faint of heart. It's and again,
it's a long game, like
with these guys. Yeah, I mean, I've so many, just their personal lives and my personal things where you've lived and almost died. Right. As you well know. Yeah. You've gone through those things. So, that's what kind of enables those possibilities.
So you've definitely got an innate skill set to bring things together, make things happen. You've been blessed to work with some good people who've given you great knowledge, and some good artists who've been equally dedicated and on the same page. So you've got a good handle on a lot of the battle of making the content. Now you have to get people's attention, regardless of if it's Montesi or Rhinito or The Process. Right. What do you find to be the biggest challenge now to garner some attention, other than if you build it, they will come?
Well, yeah, building it is one thing, and then getting their attention. And it depends on who you're trying to get the attention of, And I think even as artists and having a vested interest in this, it's hard for people to really understand, because music stands up for the test of time. But to news publications, if it doesn't bleed and it's not freshly bleeding, then it's not really a point. So having to sell and having to reach out and find that. So that's kind of another thing for me from radio and working with other people, like PR wise, is you have to tell a good story. It could be great, but if the visuals and content behind it and the rollout don't look good, or there's not a method, and that's what I find is a lot of people just, this happens, we got to get the selfie and we got to do it and then we got to put it out. But now that you've put it out, now what? what is your plan? Was there a rollout? Is it leading them to something else? So it has to be consistent.
So one of the bigger challenges now is consistency, but one of the bigger challenges in consistency is actually having all the material?
Yeah, and just being willing to be patient and to sit, and I've learned that process because the artists I work with are patient. Sometimes they've been more patient with me because I'm like, damn, we need to drop this. And then you take a step back and it's like, it's not ready. We've sat on things for a year to now, like the footage we did from the orchestra show in 2018 has never been released. So we sat on this content for 5 years.
But this will be put out with
Yes, this will be put out. So we're going to release, the album is set to release September 21st. And then with that, we're putting all that footage together. And then, because what we did too is we had the Pops Orchestra, but we didn't get a really good sound recording at the time, but we have all the footage. Mm-hmm. So what we did is we actually worked with a live orchestra producer who's worked with like Saturday Night Live and, all these orchestras. His name is Nathaniel Wolkstein. And the guy's been in orchestras since he was 12. His mom is a harpist and his dad is a pianist. So, he either live plays or works with other people to create this. So we basically went back and re-engineered, mixed, mastered, and replayed all the music, matched it with all the vocals, and then now we're syncing it up as a film with that and then release the whole thing. So that's what that next project will be coming out. Yeah.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. So that's the immediate future for Ryan Ito.
Yep.
What's the immediate future for Teezy, and what's the future for you?
Monteezy,
I definitely want to get them in here.
Yeah.
But as it relates to you, what's next on Cellus's calendar for keeping everybody running?
Man, it's just kind of looking to continue to look for more opportunities and, building stuff out and, again, building my show, continuing to do, like I'll do voiceover work. And, just finding people to collaborate with. I think that's kind of the lifeblood and the energy of it, which you enjoy, finding people that want to do creative things. And, now I'm fortunate that they've gotten to a certain point that they've worked with great artists. Just this week, Monteezy charted number 28 with his album with John Connor. John Connor's worked with Dr. Dre. He's worked with a lot of people. And they did a joint album together. It charted number 28 in Japan this week.
Nice.
So, it's just chasing those things or just, pursuing and just producing and putting it out there. And it's just, consistent is, these artists are consistent in doing it. They've proven that and they continue to do it. And, it's humbling when there's people that you look up to or you listen to for years and now you're speaking with them and you're producing music with them. And it's just being kind of calculated on how we do all those things and, taking those shots. So, for me, it's just continuing to build that out and build, what I'm doing with the radio and exploring the possibilities with high definition DJs. And we're supposed to have meetings coming up here in like the next week because they just went to DJ X, which is a conference in Atlantic City that happened. So like 5,000 DJs. So they went there as the high definition DJs and met with different vendors and all these different things. So there's other opportunities. So it was a great time for me to join with them because I bring all my radio experience and then, what they bring to it. And they know that we're all good for the work, that we're willing to do the work and build. So now we're just kind of seeing what that is. And so now there's more things that are coming. And, we're just kind of getting, again, just mastering the possibilities and just staying open and aware too. It's just, you're always looking at like, what's the next thing? Because it's largely a sales thing. You eat what you kill.
Yeah, right.
You get what you get and what you build off of. And, and that's the weird thing. It's always hurry up and wait. We got this thing. All right, cool. They want to do it. We record it. When are we going to put it out? What's the rollout plan? You just, again, so you always want to just have things like in queue. And now it's gotten to the point with, all the artists, there's always something coming, and again, that was like really just having to plan that way of like, don't say much on social media because it doesn't matter. To a certain extent, because that was the other thing. It took like 3 or 4 years of my artists to literally tell them, just shut up. Well, what do you mean? Well, it's different if you have a message in your music, like you're free to express yourself. But either way, when you say things, in a social media and everybody has an opinion, you're going to make somebody mad. So at least make them mad for them listening to your music,
Right.
and do something else. So, and just being focused.
And it sort of creates an overpromise, underdeliver, or you let your own cat out of your own bag too soon, and then that becomes the challenge.
Yeah, because and that's the thing is you want to maximize it because you create this moment, and so you want to make sure that there's an impact for that moment. So how do you do those things? And sometimes it's the timing or just the rollout and having that content. So again, everything just kind of leads to something. Like and just being willing to try. Like I was just working this past week, Ryan Ito was working on releasing a kid's book. It's a kid's book about a little kid. It's called The Cosmic Kid, and he aspires to be a rapper. Right? But the whole thing is these people, he's trying these different things, singing, being an announcer and all these things, but all these people are constantly telling him, you can't do it. You're not going to succeed and don't do that stuff. So it's just this part of this kind of motivational story of somebody that has a dream and they just want to pursue it. So, and I think that that's what's so funny is, I want to work with people that are creative, that really want to do the work and what it takes to get there, creatively, because then you can look back and be like, damn, like we have done those things. And sometimes like for us, it's like we remember the losses more than some of the wins.
Yeah, of course.
Where we've done, school projects, all these events, magazines and mixtapes and all these things through the years that have gotten us to where we are now. But you just don't, there's kind of like a bit of non-complacency, but just I think enjoying just the creativity of it and just seeing like, okay, we can do this, we can take these things. But if you would have told me 10 years ago when I first moved here to Florida, I didn't think I'd be working with artists because I don't like many people. Where they'd be like, oh, you should work with these artists. I'm like, I don't like many. So they just had to have those right factors, and I think it's just an understanding with people. But most importantly, like for me, like I care about them as a friend and what we do in business and look out for their best interests too. But they say friends and business like don't mix, and family and all that stuff, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I just think they are independent, but they're also interdependent of each other. So you have to just be mindful of those things. And I think as long as you have the best interest and there's an open communication and honesty, then, you can succeed. But a lot of it is just like killing your ego at the same time.
Which isn't the worst thing.
No, it's not. But it's hard for people to do.
Right.
And it's always going to be there. I mean,
Right.
You're always fighting something, but it's just I think, just delay and be willing to kind of like let go of your own stuff to build these things and then, see that.
Right.
So,
well, I know all that knowledge has really given you a leg up in creating those moments, creating those space for yourself as a curator and for your artists as well, no doubt. And I know we can find the culmination of Ryan Ito's work and Monteese's work streaming, where we can find
all digital
audio
platforms.
Streaming. And I'd like to talk a little bit quick here, and then we can get you out of here about where we can find you, because High Definition DJs right now, you do a show, but the show is not archived. It can only be caught in real time at the moment, correct?
Yeah, you can find the playlist. You can find me on, Instagram, DJ_Cellus, CELLUS.
Yep, we'll definitely link everything.
And the show is live every Wednesday, 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. And then the following day is at... So Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time, it plays again. I am working with them we're working the archive pages and building all that stuff out. So that's where they can find me. And then, if people really want the episodes, I have them all archived. I produce all of them too, so I'm always happy to send the link.
Part of that latitude you can have.
Yeah, because you can do it and, go from there. So it's always just like building everything out. It's never a done process, but it's just incorporating things too. So
it's building.
Yeah, just continuing to build.
You're a builder, my man.
Yeah,
and I've always respected that and appreciate that.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Well, Cellus, I got to thank you 2 times over for coming in. I know we're going to talk to you again, and I'm looking forward to getting Ryan Ito and Mr. Monteese in here too and hearing about all the awesome things they got cooking.
Sure.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
See you soon.
Yeah, man. Thank you.